Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here. Welcome back to Tesla Daily. Hope everybody had a great weekend and welcome to earnings week. Obviously this week on Wednesday we'll have Tesla's first quarter earnings report. We will be going through our normal earnings preview, but we'll do that tomorrow because we do have a lot of news to catch up on here, including a couple new interviews with Elon Musk. We've got significant factory news both for Giga Berlin and Shanghai. We've got a new Tesla price target from ARK Invest, news on Tesla Energy, and a couple other items as well. Pretty nice day for Tesla stock to start off the week, finishing up about 2% on the day to close at $1,004.29. Good outperformance versus the NASDAQ, which closed down 0.1%. All right, we'll start off today going through a couple of new interviews from Elon Musk. These were a part of the TED annual conference. So the first one was actually pre-recorded at Giga Texas right before the Cyber Rodeo event, and the other was live from the TED conferences on Thursday. That one was a little bit more focused on Twitter based on what was going on that day. We'll talk a little bit about that one, but the Giga Texas one a little bit more relevant to us. Anyway, I thought these were both really interesting interviews. I would recommend watching them both in their entirety, and I'll put the links for both in the description. But of course, if you haven't had a couple of hours to spare yet, we'll hit the highlights here. As far as Tesla topics go, of course, you got to start out with Giga Texas, as that was the scene for the interview. Chris Anderson, the interviewer here, asked about the battery production that Tesla plans for Giga Texas. And to my recollection, we've never heard Elon talk about that explicitly for Giga Texas individually. They've previously just given that 100 gigawatt hour target as a total company target. But the question here was framed around 100 gigawatt hours specifically for Texas, and Elon seemed to respond in that same manner. And he said eventually the internal battery production there would probably be bigger than 100 gigawatt hours, but hopefully they get to that in the next couple of years. All right, so 100 gigawatt hours, even if you assume pretty high energy capacity packs at 100 kilowatt hours apiece, that would be enough for 1 million vehicles. So in this comment, Elon basically saying that they want to get there with Texas within the next couple of years, and they want to go beyond that. Again, maybe not necessarily surprising to those that are following very closely, but good to have that confirmation from Elon. And if Tesla can achieve that, that would be well beyond what most people, including Wall Street, expect. That led into a conversation about the overwhelming need for batteries. Elon again reiterating that Tesla's calculated that probably 300 terawatt hours are needed to essentially be converted over to a renewable economy. And then he made a statement that seems to have been misinterpreted by quite a few people. He said that his best guess was that Tesla probably ends up doing about 10% of that, which would then be 30 terawatt hours. Okay, that's a much bigger number than we've heard Tesla talk about previously in terms of their battery production capacity target for 2030. That was 3 terawatt hours of battery day. Is the new target now all of a sudden 10 times that? Well, no, the mistake people are making here is that they're assuming Elon is talking about battery production. Same mistake was made when he mentioned this target a month or two ago. He is talking about installed capacity here with 300 terawatt hours, and then subsequently Tesla's 10% of that, not annual production. So I just want to play the clip here that clarifies that so people are certain about this issue.
In order to transition not just current electricity production, but also heating and transport, which roughly triples the amount of electricity that you need, it amounts to approximately 300 terawatt hours of installed capacity.
All right, so pretty clear there. Elon talking about installed capacity, very different than annual production. Hopefully that straightens that out. Another comment Elon made that seemed to be a little bit eyebrow-raising for people was his mention that Tesla should be at $2 billion per week in revenue later this year. That would equate to more than $100 billion per year in revenue run rate. Just for context here, Tesla in Q4 was at about $1.35 billion per week. For more context, my own projections have Tesla hitting that rate in Q3. Next, we got a number of updates from Elon on the progress of FSD. He is still of the opinion that Tesla will solve FSD safer than a human later this year. Of course, he noted that he has been wrong on that in the past. He could very well be wrong again, but that is still his current belief. As for the FSD beta, he said that they are now over 100,000 people. That's a significant expansion from what we had previously heard. Tesla in the Q4 earnings report noted that nearly 60,000 people at that time had FSD beta. He also talked a little bit about some of the systematic progress that we have made, and I do think it's a good reminder, though we know some of this. He said that, quote, "We're almost at the point where we have a high-quality unified vector space," end quote. That's probably most interesting because Tesla has been working in that direction, as we know, but it is still not quite yet complete. I think that's helpful context. And then he also talked a little bit more about Tesla and their labeling process. He said previously it would have taken several hours for an individual to label a 10-second video clip. Of course, we now know that Tesla is using auto-labeling. He talked about how they had to create their own labeling tools, create their own auto-labeling software. They're now at the point where that auto-labeling is then reviewed and edited by a human, and that edit actually trains the auto-labeler to improve. It's a great positive feedback loop. That's really how neural networks become extremely powerful. And yes, we know Tesla's been working on this, has been doing this for a while, but it's a good reminder of just the progress over the last couple of years. Not all that progress is going to be immediately visible to us right now, even with FSD beta. So I think that's an important thing to remember. Anyway, this conversation, of course, then led into real-world AI, the Tesla bot. Elon reiterating that they hope to have an interesting prototype sometime this year, might have something useful next year, but quite likely within the next 2 years. That would initially target boring, dangerous, repetitive jobs, as we've heard Elon say, but he foresees rapid growth and usefulness year over year, and he does believe this will be a consumer product within 10 years. As for the cost, we haven't really heard Elon talk too much about that previously, but he does say that he expects it to be less than a car, or at least equivalent to a cheap car. But I believe that gives us a lot more insight into what Tesla believes the cost of goods sold will look like rather than eventual pricing, which I think will be more heavily determined by level of usefulness, but at least that gives us a little bit of a possible floor for what the pricing could end up being. Probably the last major point I want to note on Tesla was from the other interview at the TED conference. Elon was talking about just the whole funding secured saga, the SEC, talking about why he doesn't respect them. He was more clear than he has ever been that Tesla did have funding secured, that the SEC knew that they continued with legal action anyway, and Elon was forced to settle because of Tesla's financial position at that time and because the banks that were funding their working capital said that they would stop funding if Elon did not settle. So yeah, you can see why Elon's not a fan, and you can also understand better why Tesla has built its cash balance and does not want to be in a situation ever again where anyone can ever get any sort of financial leverage over them. Anyway, there were a couple of other discussions on SpaceX and Neuralink. We'll talk about just a couple of quick points on that, but Elon was asked about the potential combination of these companies at some point in time. Elon has discussed that on a couple occasions on Twitter, so I wanted to share a clip of him sharing his current thoughts on that topic.
What's changed is that Tesla is now so powerful and so big and throws off so much cash that you actually could connect the dots here. Just tell the public that X billion dollars a year, whatever your number is, will be diverted to the Mars mission. I suspect you'd have massive interest in that company, and it might unlock a lot more possibility for you, no?
I mean, I would like to give the public access to ownership of SpaceX, but I mean, the thing that, like the overhead associated with a public company is high. So, I mean, as a public company, you're just constantly sued. It does occupy like a fair bit of, time and effort to deal with these things.
Right.
Elon also went on to mention that each of these companies has a very different set of investors. So it doesn't sound like at the moment Elon has too strong of an interest in company X or whatever. But it was interesting that Elon specifically noted that he would like to give the public access to invest in SpaceX. So I think that's exciting to hear for prospective investors. I don't think anything too new from SpaceX. They talked a little bit about Starship, hoping for an orbital test flight in the next few months, as Elon has said before, and then one Starship and one booster being produced every month by the end of the year is what they're hoping for. And then for Neuralink, I don't think this is new either, but he did note that they've put in an FDA application to aspirationally do the first human implant later this year. But he did also note that it would be many years before any high bandwidth neural interface, likely a decade or more, where the main use is hopefully solving brain and spinal injuries. All right, we'll wrap up with these interviews, but I do just want to play one other quick clip here, and this was Elon talking about philanthropy.
Philanthropy is a topic that some people go to. Philanthropy is a hard topic. Like, how do you think about that?
I think if you care about the reality of goodness instead of the perception of it, philanthropy is extremely difficult. SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, and Boring Company are philanthropy. If you say philanthropy is love of humanity, they are philanthropy. Tesla is accelerating sustainable energy. This is a love of philanthropy.
Right.
SpaceX is trying to ensure the long-term survival of humanity with multi-planet species. This is love of humanity. Neuralink is to help solve brain injuries and existential risk with AI, love of humanity. Boring Company is trying to solve traffic, which is hell for most people, and that also is love of humanity.
I think a lot of people, including myself, think of philanthropy as donations or charity, but it is much broader than that, basically goodwill, promotion of human welfare. And I think any company can kind of make the case for what they're doing to benefit human welfare, but clearly with Tesla and Elon's other companies, that is right at the core, and that's a huge part of what makes these businesses so exciting. On that same note, and this is the last thought on the interview, I just wish everyone could see this. Like, Elon has this reputation for being so abrasive or whatever on Twitter. People form this perception of him based on that activity without ever actually sitting down and watching a conversation like this. And yeah, certainly some of that is self-inflicted by Elon, but I think conversations like this just give a much deeper level of insight into Elon's character, and I wish more people had that. All right, let's move on and let's talk about factories. So we've got some news here on Giga Shanghai. It's been reported over the weekend, a few various different reports that Tesla is looking to restart production at Giga Shanghai. That matches the information that I have as well. It was originally reported to be targeted for today. That has moved to Tuesday. And obviously this is not going to be just a full restart. It is going to be a closed loop system, so people staying in the factory. And it sounds like it'll just be a single shift versus generally 3 shifts, but an adjusted schedule as well. So not necessarily just 1/3 of the level of production from before. Bloomberg reported that Tesla has inventory for just over 2 weeks based on its new closed loop schedule. And they say that logistics are a major problem for many other parts. So it could be a challenge there. And I've also heard that Tesla is encouraging suppliers, if they have not yet, to apply to be able to resume production as soon as possible. As for the production upgrade that was scheduled for April, sounds like that is now going to be split between May and July. I think that makes sense. July falls into Q3, of course. So Tesla probably not wanting to take the entirety of the downtime hit from this upgrade on top of this shutdown that's now already almost been a month. We've also got an update on Giga Berlin. This is being reported by Automobilwoche. It is behind a paywall, but the gist of the report is that Tesla is currently producing 350 Model Ys at Giga Berlin each week, and apparently they're targeting to get to 1,000 per week by the end of the month. I think both of those things make sense. That would pretty much be in line with my expectations. Then they also seem to suggest that Tesla will make 30,000 vehicles at Berlin this year. It's a little difficult to tell, but that seems to be more just like speculation from them. I mean, from May forward, there would be about 35 weeks or so left in the year. If they were at 1,000 per week to end April, they'd already be over that 30,000 number, even without including anything from January to April. That would also assume no further increases in production rate. So I don't think that's very likely, especially to say as Tesla's target. Sure, that number is possible, but certainly Tesla would seem to be targeting more. But anyway, the last piece of this then is that in October, Tesla was shut down for 3 weeks to convert over to 4680s from 2170s. So quickly back to that 30,000 number. Even if you take away 3 weeks, the rate would seem to suggest higher than that. And then as far as converting over to 4680s, I think we've had previous reports around September or October, so that does seem pretty plausible. All right, next item here, we've got an updated price target from ARK Invest. This did come out Thursday evening and obviously got quite a bit of attention. First off, this is a price target for 2026. So to compare with other analysts' price targets, you'd have to discount it back. Generally, the price targets we're talking about are for 12 months out. Anyway, their price target for 2026 is $4,600. That is not too surprising as that's up about 50% from their 2025 price target, which was $3,000 when they published a similar report last year. Now remember, ARK uses a Monte Carlo analysis, so these numbers basically just represent the 25th, 50th, and 75th percentile from that model. That's why if you look at their table of some of their expected outcomes, some of those can look a little bit odd. Like for example, their bear case for 2026 has the number of cars sold as 10 million, their bull case 17 million. Some of these things to me are just not plausible, and when you use a Monte Carlo, a lot of those things are just getting mixed together, and for me, it's hard to take much value out of those. You may remember last year I spent a lot of time going through this. I don't want to do that again. I'll link to the video here on screen and then again in the description if you want to go back. The argument is the same, but just to quickly capture the essence of that, if you download their model from GitHub, you can look at all the different scenarios that this model kicks out. So I'm just highlighting here the 2026 vehicle sales in each of these scenarios. There are scenarios in here that are influencing ARK's model because, again, they're using those percentiles that have Tesla delivering 102 million vehicles in 2026. I mean, I'm pretty comfortable saying that that's not possible. Sure, you can say it's an outlier, but there's tons of examples like that throughout this entire model. And even if we just ignore those outliers and look at the entire average across all the scenarios this model has generated, the average scenario has almost 19 million cars sold in 2026. This is not cumulative sales. This is that individual year, 19 million. And again, that is the average. Maybe that's not technically impossible, but I would certainly put that closer to 1% probability than 50. So like I said last year, I'm personally not a big fan of how this model is constructed, and I think very similar again this year. To its credit though, you can go in and you can adjust variables and see what kind of scenarios those kick out. For what it's worth, Elon did like a tweet about this from ARK that talked about that $4,600 price target. We've also got a quick price target update here from Alex Potter. He is reducing his price target on Tesla down to $1,260 from $1,350, mainly due to an increase in the assumed weighted average cost of capital. All right, next up, we've got a quick update on Tesla Insurance. Tesla has, looks like, revised the insurance webpage, and they have also added it to new states. So it looks like Oregon, Virginia, and Colorado have been added. So Tesla Insurance now available in 8 states, though of course California is still on the non-telemetric based insurance, but the 7 others all on Tesla Insurance, 2.0 or whatever you want to call it. Next, a couple of updates on Tesla Energy. First from PG&E, they have announced today that they have commissioned, as of April 7th, the Tesla Megapack project known as Elkhorn Battery as a part of the Moss Landing project. project. So this is a massive battery. This is 730 megawatt hours with a power capacity of 182.5 megawatts. So always fun to see those projects come online. And then a couple of days ago, Tesla also released a video about a Tesla energy project near Las Vegas. This one actually opened back in January, the Erevon Townsite project. This one is a solar and storage combination. It's got more than 500,000 solar panels, and the battery storage is 360 megawatt hours. All right, last few items here. This first one seemed to be the predominant topic of conversation on Tesla Twitter this weekend. That was Tesla's decision to remove the automatic inclusion of the mobile connector with the purchase of new Teslas. This understandably caused a lot of negative feedback. I have a couple thoughts, but first, just to clarify, it looks like from some communication with delivery centers today, as we see in this message shared out by Force User on Reddit, looks like orders placed before this decision will be receiving the mobile connector. Hopefully that eases some concerns. Obviously, still not going to be a popular decision. I'm hesitant to share my thoughts on this because I know people have very strong opinions and probably will miss the nuance that I have here. Let me just start by saying that I think there are ways that Tesla could have handled this better, but I do actually agree with Tesla's intent here. Now, intent, that's a different thing than implementation. So again, I agree with the intent, and the reason given from Elon behind that intent seems to have been largely ignored by a lot of people, and that is wastefulness. I don't think this has much to do with profitability. Tesla could just raise prices if they wanted to. That's not going to do anything to reduce waste, which I don't think it should be too surprising that Tesla cares about. Even if the majority end up using a mobile connector or want to have a mobile connector, there are plenty of scenarios where someone wouldn't need one. Let's say you crash your Tesla, but you still have your mobile connector. Okay, you don't need a second one. Let's say your household has multiple Teslas. That's becoming more and more frequent. Do you need a mobile connector for every single one? Probably not. There are legitimate scenarios where Tesla sending you one automatically would be very wasteful. All Tesla's trying to do here is create an incentive system to reduce that waste. That's starting to become sizable at the scale that Tesla is at. Some of the polls I've seen on Twitter suggest maybe 20 or 30% don't have any interest in having a mobile charger. At 2 million vehicles per year, where Tesla should be in a few months, that's 400,000 to 600,000 of these chargers that are going to go out there and more likely than not never be used. Is that really a cost, whether it's environmentally, from a parts perspective, from a financial perspective, worth bearing? Because we're not sure if people are smart enough to figure out whether or not they need to check this box for this $200 part that adds less than 0.5% to the cost of their vehicle. I don't know. To me, that's a hard case to make. I think the only leg to stand on there is that, oh, this might hurt EV adoption because it might cause some people to have bad experiences. I don't think it's that complicated. I think people can figure this out. And furthermore, as we know, EVs are incredibly supply constrained right now. So yeah, of course, you never want anyone to have a bad experience with EVs or with Tesla as a brand. But ultimately, if that does happen to a few people, that's not going to change the trajectory. And you have to weigh the cost of potentially a poor experience versus the waste from all those additional chargers, which I think can be pretty clearly defined as significant. The hypothetical poorer customer experiences because of this, I'm not as convinced of, and I think Tesla can do a lot to alleviate any of those concerns during the checkout process. So again, I agree with the intent. The implementation, I think Tesla could have done a better job of. That's often the case. Personally, I think some sort of incentive for opting out would be preferable because this is clearly a contentious topic from a perception perspective. So those are my thoughts as best as I can communicate them. I can feel probably some of you in the audience today just seething at this conversation, probably shouting that you don't know when you're going to need it, it's for emergencies. I get it. I'm not saying I'm completely right on this. Definitely not saying that Tesla handled this well. But just from the general reaction that I've seen, hate to generalize, but that's really all I can do in this case, I think people have largely ignored the waste component of this issue. So I wanted to throw in my 2 cents to at least heighten that aspect of it. All right, that took a little bit longer than hoped, but just the last couple of things here. First up, we've got some news on the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Ford on their website has stopped taking orders for all trims of the Mach-E. They've added a note there that says, due to high demand, the current model year is no longer available for retail order. Notice that says retail order. I don't see much reason to assume that they're changing much in terms of their production. Their production for March was actually at an all-time high, about 7,300 vehicles. So I think for the sake of electrification, hopefully they'll keep that up. But also probably means that any prospective customers here should probably be expecting even more significant dealer markups. Lastly, then, just kind of a fun thing on Twitter. This was spotted and shared by somebody in Denver, and it's a typical gas station sign that we're used to seeing with the gas price, but then it also has the price of electricity per kilowatt hour. Pretty cool to see that, a literal sign of the next era. Also pretty good pricing, only 15 cents per kilowatt hour for public charging. If that's fast charging, that's pretty darn good. All right, so I think that is about it for today. As I said, a long episode. We'll do the earnings preview tomorrow because we needed to catch up on all this news today. But should continue to be an exciting week, and we'll continue to see what happens there with Twitter. But as always, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. You can also find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast. And we'll see you tomorrow for the April 19th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.